Welcome to the Shepherd Podcast. I'm your host. I'm Pastor Chris. Thank you for joining me today. The podcast is a way to introduce you to people at Shepherd of the Hills, our church, school, and childcare. We've got some great people here, and I love for you to get to know them better. It's also a chance to share with you about interesting topics or things going on, causes that we want to support. And today's interview falls in that latter category of an organization we'd like to support. And my guest today is going to tell us about it. Her name is Mona Jones. And so now I'd like to welcome to the podcast, Mona. Welcome.
Thank you, Pastor. Glad to be here.
Now, first of all, tell us about the organization that we're going to talk about. And we'll come back to it later, but just briefly, what are we going to talk about in a little while?
It's called Mission for Christ Network, and it was started back in 2013 to give people who are not pastors but feel the call to go into the world to spread the gospel.
Okay, great. And you're going to have a display table in the lobby the weekend of February 5th and 6th for people to find out more. So looking forward to that, and then we'll get into that more later on. But wanted to first give people some background on you and who you are and your history. So I believe you've come to the church since I've been here.
I actually moved back after my husband died in Vermont in 2009.
Okay.
And joined the church that summer. And my stepdaughter, a lot of people know Debbie and Bob Abbott. Mm-hmm. I figured it was one way to see them every week.
Okay.
My late husband and I were instrumental charter members of Messiah out in Bernie.
Oh, were you?
Because before he retired and we moved to Vermont, we were members of Messiah.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah. And so he had asked me when he passed to be sure to come back down here where the kids are. They're supposed to take care of me as I get older. Yeah, anyway. So I joined Shepherd, which has been a blessing for me. I have developed many friendships here.
Yeah.
So I've been here a little over 12 years.
Yeah. I did not realize you were part of starting Messiah Bernie, a daughter church of Shepherd of the Hills.
Right.
Started in the 90s.
Actually, in the early 80s.
Oh, okay. It goes back that far.
It goes because we moved to Fair Oaks Ranch in 83. Mm-hmm. At that point, we were members at Redeemer, and then we got called by Pastor Bud.
Yeah.
And said, well, why don't you come check us out on Sunday? They were at the Bernie Community Center, and so we started going, I think, in 85 or 86. The Malloy family came from Redeemer also, and if the Malloys were not in church, we only had about 5 people, and that included Pastor Bud and Eunice.
Uh-huh. So it started small.
It started small, but it grew.
Yeah.
And it's still growing. So
how did you guys turn that corner from being just a tiny group to beginning to see growth?
Faith, plan. We, there were others who moved out to the suburbs and started coming to Messiah, and we welcomed anyone and everyone, and we eventually came up with a 5-year plan. Pastor Mark Dankus joined us, and his specialty was mission growth. Right. And so he helped, and I think when we started the building project in 94, because it was dedicated in 95, we had 50 families.
Oh, okay.
And that's what you need to actually cohesively support a structure.
Absolutely. That must be what I was thinking of when I said the 90s. That's when the building was built, which is around the time that our worship center building was built, also in the 90s. So a lot of building took place then. And ever since then, it's grown. And, I mean, Bernie's a hopping place.
Yes.
And so you were there at the beginning.
We were there at the beginning.
Wow.
And then I came back in 2009 and came here.
Okay. Well, let's go back to even further in your chronology. Can you tell me where you're from originally?
I was originally from Central Iowa. I grew up in Des Moines.
Okay.
My mother grew up in the German Lutheran Church.
German Lutheran Church.
German Lutheran. She remembers she was 10 years old in 1918 when they switched from German in the litany and liturgy to English, and the old ladies went, "It's not church."
Oh, really?
It's not church.
Oh, not in the mother tongue.
Yeah. And my father grew up in the Swedish Lutheran Church, which became Augustana. And when they married, the closest church to them was Missouri Synod. And so I've born and bred in it.
Born and bred. Now, when they switched from German to English in 1918, that was because of World War I, right? They didn't want to be
Correct.
identified with the Germans?
They didn't want to be identified with the Kaiser.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was a shift.
My nephew has my grandfather's hymnal, which is in German. It's a small book.
Yeah.
It has no music. It just has the words.
Just the words.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you grow up speaking any German?
No. My father spoke Swedish until he started school, and my mother spoke German very well.
Yeah.
But no, it was strictly English.
Okay. So you grew up in Iowa?
Iowa, rather sheltered compared to today. I mean, I always walked to school. My best friend from grade school and they lived across the alley, and she and I would go to the local park to play 4 blocks away across a busy street. We just told Mother we were going. No worries, no problems. We'd come home for lunch and go back and play some more.
Yeah, very innocent time, right?
Very innocent time compared to today.
Sure. And now, how long did you live in Iowa?
I was there until I graduated from college in 1969.
Okay.
I have my Bachelor of Science in Nursing from the University of Iowa.
Okay.
And I worked as a nurse in orthopedics pretty much from the time I graduated until I went to work in my husband's office in 1991.
Oh, okay. So you worked for, what, a couple decades then?
Yeah.
As a nurse?
Yeah. Some daytime, the last few years was nighttime. I got tired of having doctors yell at me. Sorry, guys.
They don't yell at nighttime?
No, they're usually too sleepy.
They're too sleepy. Okay, catch them when they're sleepy.
Catch them with their sleepy. There were a couple of them one time. It's like, you know what to do, just do it. I know what to do, but you have to tell me. Okay, I'm telling you, do it.
Okay, that's how the conversations go.
That's how they go.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
no, my husband's office manager quit. He had a medical support company. He sold orthopedic soft goods, etc. And he said, "You think you can do that job?" I said, "I probably can." But his ex-wife, Dorothy, also worked in the office. She was financial officer, bookkeeper. And he and I had been married about 13 years at that point. I said, "Ask Dorothy." And so he did, and she said, "Well, I can work with her if she can work with me." So we worked together from 91 to 95, became good friends, learned that we both liked to play cribbage. In fact, I have to catch up with her at some point. She died in 2000 because she was leading me by 137 games.
Okay.
She kept a record.
So you worked in the same office as your husband's ex-wife?
Ex-wife, yes.
And you guys made it work and you were friends?
Well, we made it work and we were friends. And one day, I do not remember what he did, but we were both mad at him. And all 5'5" of her got in front of him and shook her fist in his face and said, "When you die, we're going to bury you. And I'm going to be on one side and Mona's going to be on the other so we can harass you for eternity."
Oh, no.
And I can't remember if David or Debbie were there. Anyway, they heard it. And when she died suddenly, they called me. And they said, "Mona, we can get a deal on a 3-plot. You mind being buried close to Mom?" I said, "No." So you go out to Mission Park North, and where the Jones headstone is, he's in the middle, Dorothy's over here, and I'm going over there.
How about that? So you can stay on either side of him.
Yep, so we can harass him for eternity.
How about that? That's great. So at that time, then, you were in Texas. After nursing school, did you come to Texas?
I came to Texas. I was married at that point, and that was a marriage that did not work,
Okay.
which is a sad thing.
Yeah.
And it was a difficult decision to split, but we did. And then several years later, I had met Bob. He was selling orthopedic equipment. I was in Corpus Christi at that time. And I moved up to San Antonio and ran into him again. And we became friends, and it went from there.
So you had a husband, Bob, and a son-in-law, Bob.
Yep,
Right?
yep. And I have now 3 stepchildren, 4 grandchildren and 5 in the beginning great-grandchildren.
Oh, well.
Grandson Kyle and his wife Katie came on Christmas for Christmas dinner with the 15-month-old Walker, and he was wearing a T-shirt that said Big Brother.
Uh-huh.
And that's how they told us that they were having another one.
How cool. How exciting.
I thought that was neat.
That is really cool.
Yep.
Yeah, well, congratulations on
Them.
those special people in your family.
It's like in Proverbs, the barren woman is given a family. Because God never gave me children.
Uh-huh.
But he gave me stepchildren and grandchildren and great-grandchildren.
Wow.
So that's a blessing in my life.
That must feel like a real gift.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And my granddaughter, who is the oldest, has the 4 children. Milo is 10, Ike just turned 8, Ames is 6, Etta will be 4, and they call me Grandmona.
Grandmona. That's great.
And I love it.
That's great. Wonderful. So we talked about your career in nursing, your career assisting your husband in his practice, and then you did that until he passed away?
I did that until he retired, and we moved to Vermont in 95.
Okay.
He had grown up there, and he still had 2 brothers living.
Oh, okay.
He was the oldest. The next one was Richie. Richie died on Iwo Jima in World War II,
Really?
the day before his 18th birthday.
Oh, my goodness. Too young.
Richie badgered his mother to join early to get into the war. He was 6'4", big kid, and so she signed for him to go into the Marines. And then he was killed the day before his 18th birthday when he would have been eligible to be drafted.
Really?
And that just really damaged her in many ways
Oh, how could it not?
because she felt so responsible for that.
Oh, okay.
So.
Oh,
But Bob had 2 younger brothers that were still living, one of whom had cancer, and he decided, I want to go back. I don't know whether he was trying to go back to a better time, but he still had the business here, and he left that to his son and Bob Abbott to cope with.
okay.
It's sort of like sink or swim.
Okay, and what happened?
It's still going.
Yeah?
But a lot of hospitals now want one-stop shopping. They don't want to get a better price here and a better price there.
Sure.
It's like, just do it all.
So the big companies that can offer everything tend to do well?
Tend to do well. And
Yeah.
there are some products that stepson David makes that sell extremely well.
Yeah,
And so that keeps the company floating.
I see.
So
Okay.
it is what it is in this world.
Yeah, it makes me think of, the Walmarts
Yeah.
versus the mom and pop stores.
Right.
Yeah, I guess it's Amazon now even more than Walmart. I mean, things have
I think
changed.
it's Amazon now, yes.
Yeah.
It interests me that Amazon now has what they call Amazon Smile.
Yeah,
So everything you buy, you can support a charity.
right.
And I support the school.
Thank you.
It's an easy thing to do. I just sign up for it. If I order something, the school, it may be just pennies, but I think last year I got a notice, I gave like $96 to the school
Through Amazon Smile.
through Amazon Smile, just what I ordered on Amazon.
Wow, so you would encourage people to sign up for that?
Yes, if
Okay.
you use Amazon, it's easy and it's a neat way to support the school.
Great. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Good. Speaking of supporting causes, let's turn our attention then to Mission of Christ Network, and I know you're passionate about that. Can you tell us, first of all, how did you get involved with the organization?
Okay, I have cousins who live in Iowa still, and I was there about 9 years ago for an antique festival that they have in their little town of Walnut, which is like 850 people.
Okay.
I think Father's Day weekend last year was the 37th year that they've had this 3-day festival. And I helped at their church booth sell hamburgers, hot dogs, chicken, bratwurst, sandwiches. And their draw was homemade fruit pie. But Hannah grew up in Walnut. She was adopted by Rich Hester from China when she was 5. And so I met Hannah there, and then when she graduated from college, she went into the Mission for Christ network, and I got to see her a couple times after that, and I always got information through my cousin Janet, or when I went to visit from her dad, Rich. And then she had contacted me about, in 2019, could she come down here to fundraise, because they are required to try and raise most of their own cost to Mission for Christ.
Okay.
And so she came down, and we had 4 whirlwind days. We went to Natural Bridge Caverns. We went to all of the missions. She'd been to the River Walk, so we went to La Villita and the Governor's Mansion, and I can't think where else we went, but got very acquainted. And she is extremely passionate about proclaiming the gospel to her students. She went to Seward, Nebraska for her teaching education, and then immediately segued over to Taiwan, which is where she's been teaching for 7 years.
Okay.
So that's how I got involved. And then she contacted me last August, maybe, and said, would you be willing to be the liaison for Mission for Christ in your church?
Okay.
And I said, sure,
Okay.
because it's an amazing concept of just anybody who wants to go serve, they will train you, and you can go serve somewhere.
Now, how is this different than any other mission organization? What makes this one unique?
This one is unique in that it's not sending pastors, it's sending teachers, it's sending people who want to just serve and proclaim the gospel. I have a flyer here called, could God be calling you to go?
Okay.
It was similar to Pastor Andy. His friend said, you ought to be a preacher. You ought to go to the seminary. Well, I kind of related this to Melody about Mother Teresa. She tried to join a sisterhood, a convent, to go serve God, and they wouldn't let her, so she went on her own to India and started her own sisterhood.
It turned out well.
And turned out well to serve God and proclaim the gospel. And this is similar in it's just lay people. It was begun by lay people with pastoral support, strictly LCMS, and it is self-supporting. They raise money. I've got some notes in here. It was like last year's budget, 20 to 21, was like 1.2 million. And the organization has to support the actual structure of administrators. They have to support themselves. Their income is totally separate from what goes for the people who go out to proclaim the gospel.
So there's a support that comes into the organization that supports, I suppose, administrative costs,
Right.
things like that. And then the actual missionaries need to do their own fundraising personally.
They need to do at least some of it.
Some of it, okay.
Last I knew, Hannah's cost for a year was $9,000 to $10,000. That's not a lot.
To live on?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's what her minimum support is in Taiwan.
Wow, that sounds really doable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know when she came here to visit me, I'm looking at her and she's got this little bitty duffel. I'm going, that's all you have? Yeah. She said, I don't need anything more than that to travel.
Now, for someone to be a part of this, it seems like people could come up with all kinds of reasons why it wouldn't work. If you, let's say you've got a family at home that you're taking care of, or you've got a career, or, all kinds of ties. Is this for anybody, or do you really have to be in a certain position in life where, you're free to just pick up and move to another country?
This is for anybody.
Okay.
You could have a husband and wife and 3 kids, and they decide, we want to go teach somewhere, not necessarily in the States, but where we can go and talk about God, and they haven't heard of God.
Okay.
It's sharing God's word in many ways, in many places. You don't sometimes they have a connection with a church, say somewhere in Romania, that's not necessarily Lutheran, but they teach the Bible. And these people connect with them, and they're part of Mission for Christ, but they can go there and teach there, even though it's not necessarily LCMS, but it's Bible, gospel-based.
Okay. So the things that they're involved with overseas are pretty broad.
Very broad.
Uh-huh.
And it's just telling people about God. And it's a good, you can send them $1 a month, $10 a month, whatever you want to do, or you can just pray for them. But I know the Bumps Bible group that I was in probably 5 years ago, we collected our change every time we got together, and we sent probably $200 to support Hannah with just our change that year.
That's great.
So it doesn't take much.
Okay.
But there's information in here of, I have a flyer that has a picture of Hannah,
Okay.
and down at the bottom it gives information on how to support her
Okay.
specifically. There's you can become a prayer partner, there's donations, there's online gifts. I get her monthly newsletter. I've gotten it for 7 years now. And it's, a lot of times I'll get a mini video in there of her kids. I got a Christmas card from her finally a couple of weeks ago, and one of her 5th grade students had written to me.
Oh, how nice.
So I need to write back.
Yeah, right.
And 2 years ago, I found a pop-up nativity Christmas card that I sent to Hannah, and she said her children were fascinated by that.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
How neat. So this all started with a personal relationship with a missionary.
Right, with Hannah.
With Hannah. And then it's
Yeah.
developed into you being a real advocate for the organization.
And for her,
And for her.
supporting her.
Okay.
So it's basically it's doing what God has called us to do, to witness to the world. Carry the gospel into the world.
Absolutely.
And you don't have to have any special training. They will give you training that you need. You don't have to be a pastor. You can be a carpenter and go help build.
Okay. So all kinds of gifts are needed.
All gifts are needed.
Yeah. What's the duration of service? Long-term, short-term?
Your contract is year to year.
Year to year. Okay.
She has so enjoyed her time in Taiwan, and a lot of that has to do with she's learning her natal language again. Because she was 5 when she was adopted, and I asked her when she was here what was the one thing she remembered from the orphanage where she grew up, and she said, I got an orange once. I ate everything, including the rind.
She was hungry.
It was different.
Yeah, really.
And when she was 7, she and her dad went back, and he adopted Sarah, and she was afraid to go back. She said, I was afraid he was taking me back. That's all she ever said about the orphanage. But her students are teaching her to speak Chinese again.
How about that?
Yes.
Life coming full circle.
Full circle.
Yeah. Well, great. So February 5th and 6th, you'll be in the lobby if people would like to come up and find out more information.
And I'll have a basket.
Okay. You'll have a basket. You'll have some handouts if people would like more.
Emily is my contact at Mission for Christ in Nebraska, and she has sent me flyers and et cetera. So I will have information available if you want to pick something up. And you can go online, and there is a YouTube that gives you some, it's like 2.5 minutes of information, just the basics on Mission for Christ.
Great.
So,
and we can link to some of those in the show notes so people, as they're watching this podcast, they can look at the description and find some links that they can follow up with as well.
Good.
Yes.
Good.
So coming back to you, one thought I had as we were talking was I feel like you have This is off the topic of mission for Christ, but just more you again. I feel like you have a good sense of humor about life. You are able to take things in stride.
I relate that to my parents.
Yeah.
Life happens, you handle it, and look at the funny side.
Look at the funny side.
Look at the funny side. Weird things happen in life, and there's no explanation.
Yeah.
It's not always someone's fault.
Mm.
You enjoy life.
Yeah.
You take each day as it comes. Sometimes they're stressful. As I was explaining earlier, I have a friend who provides me with a great deal of stress, but it's not something I'm going to be under till Armageddon.
Sure. And, it reminded me just your sense of humor with the whole burial situation. I just thought that takes a lot of a good sense of humor to think of things that way. And also, when I ask you, how are you doing, you usually respond.
I respond with, I'm walking, talking, stressed, and blessed.
Which is such a good perspective. Stressed and blessed at the same time.
Yeah. I have stress, but God has blessed me more times than I can imagine in my life.
Yeah.
I can relate back to when I was 16 and I was printing the bulletins at church, and it was 10 below that Saturday, and I'm driving home and I've got the gas pedal in Mother's car down to the floorboard, and it's barely moving. So when my dad came home from work, I said, you need to check Mother's car. He went out, turned it on, raised the hood, and the gas pump was going,
oh boy,
gasoline all over the engine.
Oh no.
And he said, yeah, it's a good thing it's 10 below.
Right. Wow. So
the car did not blow up with me in it because God had a purpose.
God kept you safe. He had plans for you.
He had plans for me. He always does.
Wow. So that taught you at an early age that God has His providence in your life. He has His plan for you.
He has a plan, and I am protected. He's with me. I may not always feel it, but sometimes that's me, not him.
Okay. So what about our audience, those who are feeling stressed? How can they live with the perspective of walking, talking, stressed and blessed? How do we get that perspective?
It's take a deep breath. I do devotions every morning. That is my thing. I get up. Right now I turn up the heat, turn on the coffee pot, and I read my devotions and try to pick one word. I have several that I read each day, but I try to pick one word. And today was be grateful for God's blessings. It's grateful.
Grateful is the word of the day.
The word of the day.
Yeah. Well, I am grateful for this time with you today, Mona.
Well, thank you for asking me. Thank you for letting me share Mission for Christ.
You're welcome, and I'm glad you'll be able to share it more in person with whoever would like to find out some more information. February 5th and 6th, before and after the services.
I'll be here for all services. I will be well blessed that weekend.
Absolutely, you will be. We all will be.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much for watching the Shepherd Podcast. You got to learn more about Mona as well as Mission of Christ Network, and we encourage you to follow up by checking out the links that are provided in our show notes, as well as come talk to Mona in person that weekend of the 5th and the 6th of February. And until next time, God's blessings to you. May He keep you healthy and safe and strong. The peace of the Lord be with you today.